never expected my summer to turn into something like this, sitting on a creaky couch in a stranger's living room, watching cartoons with a 5-year-old kid I barely knew, while his dad, the guy who hired me, was in the kitchen making dinner and stealing glances that made my heart stutter. Yeah, it sounds like a rom-com cliché, but trust me, none of this was on my radar a week ago. So here's how it all started. My sister, Jenna, has been babysitting for this single dad down the street, Mike, for a few months now. She's usually the responsible one, the kind of person you can trust with your plants, your dog, and apparently your entire kid. But Jenna had to take a last-minute trip to visit our parents out of state, and since she couldn't pass up the chance, she asked me to fill in for her. Me, the guy who barely survives on microwave meals and binge-watching shows on his laptop. I wasn't thrilled at first. Babysitting isn't exactly my idea of a fun summer job, and honestly, I wasn't sure I could handle a kid without accidentally letting them watch too much YouTube or eat nothing but gummy bears. But hey, money is money, and Mike promised to pay well. Plus, it wasn't just babysitting. I was also supposed to hang out, keep the kid entertained, and help with bedtime. Simple enough, right? When I met Mike, I immediately noticed how different he was from your typical dad stereotype. He's in his early 30s, tall with this kind of quiet confidence that doesn't scream, "I'm trying too hard." He was wearing a wrinkled flannel shirt and jeans, but there was something in his eyes, a mix of exhaustion and warmth that made me want to know more about him. His son Liam was shy at first, clutching a stuffed dinosaur like it was his lifeline, but once I pulled out some old board games from the closet, he started to perk up. The apartment was modest, maybe a bit cluttered with toys and kids, books, but you could tell Mike cared about making it a home. There were framed pictures of Liam all over the place, and on the fridge, a messy collage of drawings and notes in colorful crayon. It hit me then how much responsibility this guy carried on his shoulders all by himself. As the evening went on, Mike and I found ourselves in the kitchen while Liam was finishing his dinner. We started talking about the usual stuff: work, weekend plans, how hard it is to be a solo parent. I don't know what made me open up, maybe the tired but genuine look in his eyes, but I told him about my own struggles with trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. He listened, really listened, and that's kind of rare these days. Just as Liam was settling down for bed, Mike surprised me. He asked if I could stay a little longer, maybe just hang out after the kid was asleep. I was caught off guard but said yes, mostly because I wanted to see where this was going. And now, sitting here in this living room, the TV humming softly and the house quiet except for the occasional creak, I realized this summer might just turn into the most unexpected chapter of my life. But what I don't know yet is how much this little arrangement will change everything for Mike, for me, and for Liam, the tiny guy who's already won a big piece of my heart. And honestly, I'm kind of terrified, but maybe, just maybe, I'm ready for it. The quiet in the apartment was different once Liam was asleep. No little footsteps pattering around. No questions about superheroes or which dinosaur was the coolest. Just Mike and me, two guys in a living room that suddenly felt way too small for the weight of everything we hadn't said yet. Mike poured himself a glass of wine and offered me one too. I hesitated for a second. Wine wasn't really my thing, but I wasn't about to turn down a peace offering when I was this out of my depth. So I took the glass, trying to act casual while my insides did a little dance of nerves. "You did good with Liam," Mike said, breaking the silence. There was a softness in his voice that threw me off. Like he wasn't just talking about babysitting, but something bigger. "Thanks," I said, trying not to sound too eager. He's a smart kid, and way more patient with my terrible jokes than I expected. He laughed softly, and for a moment, the exhaustion I'd seen earlier melted away, replaced by this ease. It was the kind of laugh that made me think he hadn't really had a chance to just be himself in a while. Yeah, he's a handful sometimes, but he's worth it. Every single time. I nodded, feeling this weird lump in my throat. Being a single dad sounded harder than I'd ever imagined. It wasn't just the sleepless nights or the constant juggling. The weight of it all was something you could see in his eyes, even when he tried to hide it. We sat there for a few minutes, sipping our wine, and then Mike shifted on the couch. I'll be honest, it's been kind of lonely. I looked at him, surprised by how open he was being. Yeah. I mean, I love Liam more than anything, but sometimes I just wish there was someone else. Someone to share the crazy, you know? Someone who gets it. I felt my heart speed up and I swallowed hard. Part of me wanted to tell him I got it. Hell, I wanted to be that someone. But I wasn't sure if this was just a tired dad venting or something more. Maybe you don't have to do it alone, I said quietly. It came out before I could think twice, and I wasn't sure if I'd just crossed some invisible line. Mike's eyes met mine, steady and thoughtful. That's what I'm hoping, he said. And then, in a voice so low I almost missed it, maybe that's why I asked you to stay. I froze for a second, trying to process it. Had I read into things too much? Was this just a lonely guy craving company? But the way he looked at me, that quiet hope, made me realize this was more than just a friendly invitation. Look, I don't want to mess things up, he added quickly, like he was afraid I'd bolt. I'm not great at this stuff. Relationships, feelings, all that. Neither am I said, laughing a bit nervously. But maybe we can figure it out together. He smiled then, something real and warm, and it was like a door opening in a room I'd been stuck in for too long. We talked for hours after that, about everything and nothing. Our fears, our dreams, the weird little things that make us who we are. It felt natural, like the start of something that didn't need to be rushed or explained. Just two guys trying to find a little light in the messiness of life. The next morning, Liam was up bright and early, ready to take on the world with that boundless energy only a 5-year-old can have. Mike looked tired but happy, and when Liam ran over to me, pulling me into a giant hug, I knew this wasn't just babysitting anymore. It was the beginning of a story I never expected to be part of. But now I couldn't imagine being anywhere else. After that morning, things started settling into this weird, comforting rhythm. Liam, Mike, and me, 3 unlikely teammates navigating the chaos of life in a tiny apartment that suddenly felt more like home than anywhere else I'd been in a long time. I'd come over most afternoons, officially babysitting, but it quickly became clear that wasn't all I was doing. I was helping Mike with chores, fixing little things around the apartment, and sometimes just sitting with him while Liam played or napped. The more time I spent there, the more I felt like I was part of something I hadn't known I was missing. One afternoon, Mike was on the couch, laptop open, trying to work from home. Liam was sprawled on the floor, building some ridiculously elaborate Lego spaceship. I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables for dinner when I heard Mike mutter under his breath. "What's up?" I asked, walking over with the cutting board. "Just work stuff," he said, but I could tell it was more than that. He rubbed his temples like he was trying to push through a headache. I leaned against the counter. "You don't have to do it all, you know." Mike looked at me, eyes tired but grateful. "I know. It's just hard to ask for help. Sometimes I feel like if I'm not the one doing everything perfectly, it all falls apart." I nodded. "I get that. But you're not alone. You've got me, and you've got Liam." He smiled softly, and for a moment, the tension in the room eased. Later that night, after Liam was asleep, Mike and I sat on the balcony with mugs of tea. The city lights stretched out below us, and the night was warm and quiet. "I'm not used to this," Mike said, breaking the silence. "Having someone here who cares. It's scary, but good." I reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair off his forehead. "It's scary for me too. But I'm here. We can figure it out together." He looked at me then, and something shifted between us. A silent promise, maybe, or just the beginning of trust. Over the next few weeks, our bond grew stronger. We shared late-night talks, random movie marathons, and endless laughter with Liam. There were moments when the weight of responsibility hit Mike hard, and I tried my best to be the steady presence he needed. One Saturday, we decided to take Liam to the park. Watching Mike with his son, how patient and loving he was, made my chest ache in a way I hadn't expected. Liam ran around, chasing bubbles, his laughter echoing in the crisp air. Mike and I sat on a bench, sharing a quiet smile. "You're pretty amazing with him," I said. Mike shrugged, but his eyes were soft. "He's worth every crazy minute." I looked at him, really looked, and felt something inside me bloom. Hope, maybe, or the courage to believe in something new. That night, as we tucked Liam into bed, he looked up at both of us with sleepy eyes and said, "I like when you're both here." Mike and I exchanged a glance, our hearts full and a little bit scared, because this wasn't just babysitting anymore. It was something real, something worth fighting for, something that, maybe, was the start of a family. That night, after Liam finally fell asleep, Mike and I found ourselves back on the couch. The way he looked at me was different now. Less guarded, more open. Like he was letting me in not just as a babysitter, but as someone who mattered. "I never thought I'd say this," he started, voice a little shaky. "But having you here, it feels like a relief, like I'm not carrying everything on my own." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "You don't have to. Not anymore." We sat in silence for a bit, the kind that feels heavy but also full of something unspoken and important. Then Mike laughed softly, the kind of laugh that only comes when nerves start to slip away. "So what now?" he asked, eyes locked on mine. I wanted to say something clever, something that made this moment feel less like a leap and more like a step forward, but all I could do was shrug. "I don't know, but I want to find out." Mike smiled, and for the first time, I saw something like hope in his eyes. It was fragile but real, and suddenly the future didn't seem so scary. The next few days were a blur of normal life. Work, school, playdates, and that familiar chaos that comes with raising a kid. But beneath the surface, something was shifting between Mike and me. The way we talked, the way we moved around each other. It wasn't just about babysitting anymore. It was about building something new. One afternoon, Mike asked me to help with something. "Come with me," he said, grabbing his keys. "I want you to meet someone." Curious and a little nervous, I followed him out of the apartment and into his car. We drove to a local community center where a group of single parents met once a week. As Mike introduced me to the others, I saw a side of him I hadn't known. The part that struggled but kept going, the part that found strength in connection. After the meeting, as we walked back to the car, Mike looked at me and said, "I'm glad you're here. I don't think I could do this without you." My chest tightened and I smiled. "Me too." Back at the apartment, Liam was waiting with a huge grin. "Guess what?" he said, bouncing on the balls of his feet. "Mommy's coming to visit next weekend." Mike's face softened, but there was a flicker of anxiety too. "Yeah, she's coming for a few days." I sensed the unspoken worries beneath his words, the complicated feelings about co-parenting, about what the future might hold. That weekend, Mike, Liam, and I prepared the apartment for the visit. We cleaned, cooked, and even bought a small bouquet of flowers. When she arrived, I watched as Mike's demeanor change slightly, more formal, more careful, but Liam was just thrilled to see his mom, running into her arms without a care in the world. Over the next few days, I tried to be a quiet support, giving Mike space when he needed it and staying close when he looked like he wanted company. It was a different dynamic, one filled with old history and new possibilities. One evening after Liam was asleep, Mike and I finally talked about it. "This is complicated," he admitted. "More than I thought it would be." I nodded. "But you're handling it better than I expected." He smiled, a little tired but genuine. "Having you here makes it easier. I don't know what I'd do without you." I reached out, brushing a hand over his cheek. "You don't have to find out." In that moment, I realized how much I'd come to care for this man and his son. How much I wanted to be part of their lives, not just as a babysitter or a friend, but as something more. And as we sat there, the city lights twinkling outside the window, I felt something shift inside me, like this was the start of a new story, one I was ready to write with them. In the days after Liam's mom left, there was a quiet kind of tension in the apartment, like the air was holding its breath. Mike was being more tentative with me, his smiles a little less sure, his touches a little more cautious. I knew the visit had stirred up a lot of old feelings, and maybe some things about us felt less simple now. But I wasn't ready to back away, not when I felt like we were finally building something real. One night, after putting Liam to bed, Mike flopped onto the couch with that familiar tired look. I handed him a beer, and we sat side by side, the silence thick but comfortable. "You know," he said finally, "I'm scared." I looked at him, surprised by the confession. "Scared of what?" of screwing this up, of getting attached and then having it all fall apart. Liam's been through a lot already. I don't want to mess that up for him or for myself. I swallowed, feeling the weight of his words. Yeah, I get that, but sometimes you've got to take the risk. Otherwise, you never know what you might lose or gain. Mike laughed, a little bitter. You make it sound so easy. It's not. But I'm here, not going anywhere. He turned to look at me then, his eyes searching mine like he was trying to find the courage he needed. I don't want to be alone anymore. Not just with Liam, not with anything. That hit me hard, because, honestly, I felt the same. We moved closer, the space between us shrinking until I could feel his breath. I reached out, resting my hand on his thigh, and he didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned in, and our lips met, soft at first, testing, and then with something deeper, a promise without words. That night changed everything between us. It didn't solve all our problems or erase the fears, but it was a start. The kind of start that feels both terrifying and hopeful. Over the next few weeks, we slipped into this new rhythm, mixing parenting duties with moments just for us. Liam was the center of our world, but Mike and I found little pockets of time to talk, laugh, and just be together. One afternoon, we took Liam to the zoo. Watching Mike chase after him as he ran from one exhibit to another made me realize just how much love was packed into this messy, imperfect little family. On the ride home, Liam fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted but happy. Mike glanced over at me and smiled. Thanks for doing this, for being here, I shrugged, grinning. Guess I'm stuck with you guys now. He laughed. Good, because I don't want to do this with anyone else. Later that night, as we sat on the balcony again, Mike turned serious. I've been thinking, he said, about the future. About us. My heart skipped. Yeah? I want to try. To really try. But I also want to be honest. This won't be easy. There will be hard days, moments when it all feels overwhelming. I reached for his hand, squeezing it. I'm ready for hard, with you. Mike smiled, relief, and something like joy shining in his eyes. We leaned into each other, the city lights twinkling around us, and in that quiet moment, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Maybe life hadn't planned for me to babysit a kid and fall in love with his dad, but sometimes the best stories are the ones you never saw coming. The weeks that followed felt like we were walking a tightrope between hope and uncertainty, but with every step, I found myself more and more drawn into this life with Mike and Liam. It wasn't always easy. There were late nights when Liam's nightmares woke us both up, mornings when Mike's stress from work spilled over, and moments when I wondered if I really belonged here. But the connection between us kept pulling me back, stronger than any doubt. One Saturday morning, I showed up at Mike's apartment early, carrying a bag of groceries and a plan to make pancakes for breakfast. Liam was already up, rushing around in his superhero pajamas, ready to save the day or at least demolish a stack of syrup-soaked pancakes. Mike was in the kitchen, looking bleary-eyed but smiling when he saw me. You're early, he said, rubbing the sleep out of his eyes. I figured I'd surprise you guys, I said, unpacking the groceries. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day, right? Mike laughed, and Liam flopped onto the couch, declaring himself Captain Pancake and demanding a stack big enough to fuel a rocket ship. As we cooked, chatting and laughing, I caught Mike glancing at me from time to time, those quiet looks that made me feel like he was trying to say something without words. After breakfast, Liam wanted to build a fort in the living room. While the three of us dragged blankets and pillows around, Mike and I exchanged those little smiles that had become a language of their own. Once the fort was up, and Liam was busy turning it into his secret base, Mike and I found ourselves alone in the kitchen, standing a bit too close. Can I be honest? Mike asked, voice low, always. I'm scared, not just about us, but about messing this up for Liam. I want to do right by him, but sometimes I don't know if I'm good enough. I stepped closer, placing a hand on his arm. Mike, you're the best dad I've ever seen. Liam's lucky to have you. And whatever this is between us, it's not about being perfect. It's about being real. Together. He looked at me, eyes softening, and I could see that little crack of hope breaking through his doubts. Later that afternoon, we took Liam to the park. Watching him run around, carefree and full of joy, made me realize how much life had shifted in such a short time. Mike and I walked side by side, arms brushing, neither of us rushing to fill the silence. So I said, "Have you thought about what this means?" "Us?" Mike hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, I have. More than I expected." "Good," I said, grinning, "because I'm pretty sure I want to keep doing this. With you, with Liam." He smiled back, that slow, genuine smile that made my heart race. "You know," he said, "I never thought someone like you would come into our lives and change everything." "Me neither," I admitted, "but I'm glad you did." As the sun dipped below the horizon, we sat on a bench watching Liam play, feeling like maybe, just maybe, we were building something that could last. That night, after Liam was asleep, Mike and I lingered on the couch longer than usual, talking about dreams, fears, and the future. We didn't have all the answers, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that we were in it together. And as I looked at Mike, tired but hopeful, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going anywhere. Not now. Not ever. The next few weeks felt like a whirlwind in the best possible way. Every day brought moments where I wondered how I ever thought I could live without this little patchwork family I was suddenly part of. But, as with anything new and good, there were also moments of doubt and hesitation that poked at the edges, reminding me that nothing here came without its challenges. One Sunday morning, I woke up to the sound of soft giggles coming from the living room. I stumbled out of bed, rubbing the sleep from my eyes, and peeked around the corner. There was Liam, completely engrossed in one of those ridiculous toy cars that made more noise than it should, while Mike sat beside him, trying to keep a straight face as Liam made engine noises at the top of his lungs. Seeing them like that, so easy and joyful, hit me harder than I expected. The way Mike's eyes softened whenever Liam looked at him, the patience he showed, even when the kid's enthusiasm threatened to drive anyone crazy. It was the kind of thing you don't notice until you're standing right there in the middle of it. I shuffled into the room and Liam beamed at me. "Hey, Captain Pancake! Wanna race?" I laughed and grabbed one of the cars. "You're on!" Mike watched us, a smile tugging at his lips before looking over at me with that quiet, steady expression that made me feel like maybe, just maybe, he was starting to trust me not just with Liam, but with his heart. Later that day, after lunch had been devoured and Liam was napping, Mike and I found ourselves alone on the balcony. The city buzzed quietly below, a steady hum of life moving on without us for a moment. "I've been thinking about something," Mike said, swirling the remnants of his coffee in the mug, "about us and how this all fits into the big picture." I nodded, leaning back on the chair, curious. "I want to take this seriously," he admitted. "Not just as a fling or some temporary thing while I figure out the solo dad life. I want to build something stable for Liam and me. And maybe, eventually for you too." My heart thumped, maybe louder than it should have. "That sounds like exactly what I want. But," he said, voice quieter now, "I'm scared of getting hurt, of messing it all up. I don't want to let Liam down, and I don't want to lose you either." I reached across the small table and took his hand. "Mike, I'm not perfect, and neither are you. But I want to try. I want to be part of your life, fully, the good, the scary, the messy." He squeezed my hand, a tiny smile breaking through the worry. "Okay," he said. "Let's try." We sat there for a while longer, just holding hands and watching the world go by. Over the next few days, the air between us shifted in subtle, wonderful ways. We started sharing more. Stories from our childhoods, little fears and dreams we'd tucked away. It wasn't always easy. Sometimes the past came up like a stubborn shadow, but we faced it together, like a team. One Thursday evening, Mike asked if I could stay late after putting Liam to bed. I agreed, curious and a little nervous. Once Liam was asleep, Mike led me to the couch, where the soft glow from the lamp made the room feel warm and safe. "I want you to meet someone," he said, his voice low. Before I could ask who, The doorbell rang. Mike opened the door, and in walked his best friend Jake, a tall, easygoing guy with a goofy grin and the kind of laugh that filled the room. Jake gave me a friendly nod. "Heard you're the new babysitter/boyfriend in training." Mike rolled his eyes but smiled. "Jake, this is the guy I've been talking about." I shook Jake's hand, feeling a mix of nerves and relief. Meeting Mike's close friends felt like a big step, like I was being invited deeper into his world. Jake plopped down on the armchair, eyes twinkling. "So, what's the story? How'd you end up here?" Mike and I laughed, and as we talked, I realized how important it was for this relationship to have roots outside the apartment. The friends, the community, it all mattered. Later, when Jake left, Mike pulled me close. "Thanks for sticking around, for everything." I smiled against his chest. "There's nowhere else I want to be." That night, as we fell asleep tangled together, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Hope. Real hope. I knew the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth. There would be challenges, parenting struggles, fears, and moments of doubt. But with Mike and Liam, I was ready to face whatever came next. Because sometimes, the most unexpected detours lead you exactly where you're meant to be. Months had passed since I first stepped into Mike and Liam's world, and now, sitting on the couch with Mike's head resting on my shoulder, I could barely imagine my life any other way. The awkwardness and uncertainty had softened into something steady, a kind of quiet happiness that didn't need grand gestures or shiny moments to feel real. Liam was playing on the floor with his blocks, calling us over to admire his latest castle. Mike and I exchanged a glance, that same easy smile passing between us like a secret. We had been through so much together, the late nights, the fears, the hard conversations, and somehow, that made this feel even more precious. One evening, after Liam was tucked in bed, Mike and I sat on the balcony, the city lights twinkling below. He took my hand, fingers intertwining with a familiarity that felt like home. "I know this isn't perfect," he said softly, "but it's ours, and I wouldn't trade it for anything." I squeezed his hand, feeling the weight of those words settle in my chest. Neither would I. There were no big declarations or dramatic confessions. Just two people who had found each other in the midst of messy, beautiful life. We'd built something steady, something real, and that was enough. Sometimes love isn't about fireworks or fairy tales. Sometimes it's about showing up day after day, choosing each other with all the flaws and fears in tow. And as I looked at Mike, watching Liam sleep peacefully in the next room, I realized that this imperfect, unexpected family was exactly where I was meant to be.